Welcome in to a whole new Ballgame podcast. I'm Alex Fuse. There's Vinnie Pasquantino. How is everyone doing on this Christmas Eve morning?
Well, I'm doing fantastic here. I shaved my chin piece, Alex. I don't know if you can tell, but I did shave my face. So
Now
that's
that
very exciting for everybody. Now I forgot how much of a double chin that I actually had until I shaved the chin piece, and I don't grow great facial hair. So, you know, we'll take what we can get here. I grow a mean chin piece that really is just an inch or two of hair that grows straight down from my beard or from my chin. And that's about really all I got. Sometimes I let it get patchy here on the sides. I grow a terrible mustache. But yeah, it's shaved for now. So in 2 months or so, I will have another chin piece again after it fully grows out. So that's really what we're doing. We're just living on this. It is currently Wednesday night when we're filming. Our own Washington Wizards are going to tip off here in about an hour.
I'm
They're playing
excited.
the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm pumped. Could not be more excited for opening night for our Washington Wizards.
I know I got the TV all set up and I'm excited to watch tonight's game.
Are you going to watch?
Yes.
Good. Very good. And I'll be circling around a bunch of different NBA games tonight. There's a whole bunch of tip-offs, and we just found out about 40 minutes ago that the Thunder game will not happen. The Thunder Rockets will not be played tonight.
There's a lightning storm in the area, and they had to postpone tonight's game, right?
Yeah, yep, that is the story that they're going with. That's not true at all, but yep, that's what we're going to go with here on this podcast, that there is a storm in the area for the
A
Rockets.
thunderstorm.
A thunderstorm, so to speak, has happened, and that game will not be able to play. But how are you doing, Alex? We have really not spoken since our last
We have it.
last intro and outro. So
I'm doing
how
good.
have you been?
I'm a little tired tonight, but I got my third cup of coffee.
Oh, very good.
That we are not sponsored by that company, but if they do want to sponsor this podcast, just they know where to.
Yeah, that's right. If they want to sponsor us, we'll say their name. We'll say their name.
Right.
But for now, we're just coffee drinkers. We just drink coffee. Doesn't matter where it's from. Just coffee drinkers.
Just coffee drinkers. But if they do want us to drop that name, they know where to get a hold of us.
That's right.
On social media.
Today
was a good day. Honestly,
that's good. I hope everybody saw Alex's reach to try to get Pitching Ninja on the podcast. That happened Wednesday morning. That was hilarious. I almost tweeted back at him and said, "Wow, nice reach, Alex. Good try getting him on the podcast." But maybe one day we'll have him on. We're really excited about First Base Appreciation Week whenever we decide to actually have that.
Wait, I love. Just let me interrupt you for like the first time ever. I love how you say like you saw the tweet and you were thinking about reaching out or responding to the tweet, but you didn't engage in any of them.
I'm always lurking, Alex. I'm always lurking, and that's just how I like to live my life. I'm lurking around. I see everything and I see nothing all at the same time. So, that's just how I live over here.
Okay. Well, we might have got Pitching Ninja if you jumped in the conversation.
Yeah, well, actually, his son played on the Charlottesville Tom Sox the year after I did. So, he's been up to Charlottesville. He's seen some Tom Sox games. I don't think they won a championship that year. I think they had a hiatus from winning the championship that year, but then they won it the next year, I think, if my math is correct, which we never know. So,
right. I'll bet that your math is wrong on that.
Well, what you got on this interview today? We've got Nancy Newman on the show. A super exciting interview. Now it might get a little bit what's the tech word? What you know what I'm trying to say?
Choppy.
Yeah, it'll get a little bit choppy. Alex and I were both having some Wi-Fi issues, and we felt really bad because Nancy was such a great interview. And when we listen back, it cuts out a little bit. Hopefully our editing department, which is Alex, can really hammer home and try to make it sound a little bit better. But Nancy was great. We got a lot of good stuff out of her, and some of the stories she tells were just tremendous.
Yeah, and Vinny, like what we were just saying, Nancy is best friends with Bob Costas. She's also drops this incredible story about her and the boss, George Steinbrenner, that she wanted to throw in there at the end of the interview. And um, she will never be on a podcast ever again. And you know why?
Why?
Because no spoiler alerts, but she's not welcome on after the balls and strikes segment.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah, that is right. That is right. Alex is a little bit angry about how that went down, especially because Nancy comes from a similar background of Alex, and I just mean in terms of being a broadcaster, journalist, and an all-around.
And she's a good friend of mine.
And
okay?
a good friend of Alex. But, you know, you would like to think that the players would side with me and the non-players would side with Alex, and that just didn't happen. And that just means that I'm breaking down barriers here on a whole new ball game. And I'm just really excited to share, especially balls and strikes with everybody.
So
wait, I'm interrupting you on your introduction here. I really want people to know that when Alex just brought up Nancy being friends with Bob Costas, I hope everybody notices how that sounded a little bit choppy, because Alex ran out of space on his computer. And while we were in the middle of recording our first intro, it cut out. So what we're going to try to do here is edit this one and the other one. We've never gone back and recorded an intro before, ever. And so what we're doing here is we're trying to piece our first intro with the middle piece of the intro too, because Alex's computer ran out of data. So you'll probably notice it more if you're watching this on YouTube, but you'll see that it cuts out a little bit. But our editing department is really good at editing. So you probably won't even notice, but again, our editing department, really good. They do a fantastic job. And we just want to shout them out a little bit because you'll probably see a little bit of a glitch in there. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome onto the show, Nancy.
Joining us on the podcast today, great friend of the show, Nancy Newman, a Yes Network broadcaster. She's been with the Yes Network ever since the Yes Network started off. Nancy, thanks so much for taking the time to join us on the podcast today.
Hi, guys. So good to see you. Happy holidays.
Absolutely. So, Nancy, it's always great to talk with you. And, you know, you've been such a great friend of mine. And we met at the New York State Baseball Hall of Fame just a little over a year ago. I think we've known of each other, but we met first at that Hall of Fame induction ceremony. What was that like for you to be a part of that and to be the MC of that event?
It was fantastic. And it was crowded, which was cool. It was full of energy, which is also spectacular. When you think back to when it started about a dozen years ago, just a hometown New York State, a ballroom full of notable people, and just really very honored. I think I felt very honored to be hosting, which was a very special experience for me. Ron Darling, Mike Pagliarulo, Goose Gossage, you could go on. The room was full with dignitaries.
So what goes into hosting an event like that? Like, what kind of prepping do you need to do to make sure that you can get your job done?
Good question, Vinnie. Mostly the first thing, I focus in on the subject matter and what it is. And in this event, the New York State Baseball Hall of Fame, I looked at its history. I looked at we had a rundown, an outline, but really it's just a one-page skeleton. I wrote everything, but it was a joy. You look at who's going in, and our mutual friend, Alex and I, Bob Costas, one of my all-time favorites, if not the all-time guy for me. And I know I'm not alone in that. He was with us in our table too. He was sat with us at our table. And I think about the inductees mostly and how to make it personal for them and special for them.
You know, and you mentioned Bob, and, you know, we'll talk about him, you know, but I'm curious. So I don't know. We were actually talking on the phone yesterday, Nancy, and I was about to ask you this question. And I go, you know what? That's actually a good question for the podcast tomorrow. So where did this friendship with Bob start?
Okay, I'm going to take you way back when I was just a puppy starting out in the business. 25 years ago, you guys were just being introduced to the planet. But back then, it was the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. And Bob Costas, of course, was hosting, as he's done for the Olympics, it seems like. It was an event in Atlanta, and I was working at CNN Sports at the time. I had just started a couple of years previously, and I met him there. And you know how Bob is. He is such a spectacular human being. Not only is he the most talented guy that I've ever seen, he's someone you look up to, someone you hope you can pick up things from. And then he's just as wonderful a person as he is a broadcaster. And that is saying something. The fact that he would remain friends and know you and answer your call, he enables you to ask the questions you're dying to ask him. At least that was my story with him. I could go to him when I had a real deep question that was deep for me, and important to me. And I always felt that I was getting the most perfect advice. He's just committed to being good to people.
So at what point did before we started talking, Alex asked what would be the correct title for you. And, we settled on broadcaster. What made you realize you wanted to become a broadcaster?
I thought about that a little bit too. I think that I don't remember when I started liking sports because I don't remember not liking it. Sometimes I think we come out of the womb liking what we like. It's just what it is, right? And I was a figure skater when I was a kid. But when I was a little kid back then, of course, there weren't a lot of women doing sports casting, but I was young. I wasn't thinking that, but I kind of knew somewhere in the back of my mind that I wanted to do something related to sports.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know, a team psychologist. I wasn't really sure. But as I grew, I liked writing and I liked English. And I took all the Englishes and I did very well. And I knew that I enjoyed that. Then one thing leads to another. You start experiencing things. And I saw a guy that was going to school with me, a few grades ahead of me. He graduated before I know way more than him. I could talk him under the table. Why can he do it and me not? Right? So I started to go for it back then. And it worked out on the set one time, experimenting with one of the guy's scripts locally. And it just came out of me. And that's when I knew, you know how you discover your gifts, like you, Vinnie. Hey, how did you know you could play baseball? It happens like that.
You mentioned figure skating. When was the last time you went figure skating? Have you gone skating recently?
No, way too long ago. My skates are with my mom. So no, it's been a long time. Way too many sprained ankles. Way too many sprained ankles. But it was a joy. It was a joy. It certainly made me understand the athletic world. Not thinking about that at the time. Everything contributes to who you become with what you will eventually do necessarily, but somehow it all contributes to you being what you've become, right?
Absolutely. And I think that is what is so cool about this job in particular at a large, is because it changes in different ways, but it still has that same meaning. What do you think that meaning to this job, in your opinion?
I think that's probably a personal answer. I was very fortunate to have two amazing jobs. I mean, imagine being barely fresh out of university and what felt like a blink later, being at CNN Sports, learning under the best in the business, not only in the sports world, but also in the news world, having the exposure inside that newsroom and the energy that is CNN at the time. This was 25 years ago, like we mentioned, watching from the best. And they were all there behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. The late, great Nick Charles, sports-wise, certainly. And I was such a fresh young puppy. Hannah Storm, thank you for leaving CNN and moving on to NBC Sports, opening a vacancy that the world and universe decided was mine, changed my life forever. Bill McPhail, what a wonderful man. I will love him forever, the late, great Bill McPhail. Andy McPhail's uncle, Andy McPhail, the current president of the Philadelphia Phillies. So I think it's a personal answer to circle back. For me, it's always about bringing the people we admire, the sports figures, managers, front office people, whoever resonates with a particular viewer at any given moment. It's bringing that person to the viewer. That's how I view myself, as a conduit.
So you have been with the Yes Network since it started. So how has it been like seeing that brand grow into what it is today from how it started?
Vinnie, it was so exciting coming from CNN Sports and a global universe where we covered absolutely everything and you were seen around the world. What a foundation. 10 years under the best, you know, and becoming more of myself. And then you move to the Yes Network, and I'm a long time Yankee fan. My family were Yankee fans. My dad, Don Mattingly posters in my room, the whole thing. So Niagara Falls area is home. So just knowing that there's going to be a Yankees Yes Network, and it coincided perfectly with the ending of CNN Sports because they disbanded, and this was starting up. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. Close to home. It's the Yankees. This is for me. So I went after it, and it worked out really well, obviously. It was so exciting. We did football back then too. I had the Jets beat. I traveled with the Jets, would look forward to my post-game Herman Edward reviews single Sunday. They were and then the Yankees. And I was in the clubhouse regularly those years. I'm still good friends with many of them. It was incredible to watch the Yankees organization do its thing from within, because I came from one incredible outfit in CNN to the New York Yankees.
So you bring up, I have a follow-up to that. So you said,
yes, go for it, Alex, go for it.
And we always talk about, how perfect timing is this industry, and like what happened? What do you think? Have you ever thought, that's the question. Have you ever thought back, and if the Yes Network never got started, what your next step would have been, after CNN Sports disbanded and, before the Yes Network got created? Like, did you ever think like what life might have been like without the Yes Network?
Before we were even released from CNN, I was fortunate enough to be hired by Fox Sports in Los Angeles. It was a brief few months, but I just did not feel like it was going to be a forever home for me. But I did get that opportunity, which was wonderful because I had a job. The answer is there was no plan B. I was going to be doing this somehow, somewhere.
So as you've kind of grown into the business, and this was not a question that I had told Alex, so I'm sorry for throwing this one on you, but social media, how do you think has it affected everything that's going on?
Like most things, my first answer is in some ways it's amazing, some ways not so great. So you have to figure it out for yourself, what it means for you, what you want it to be for you. For me, at this stage, it's still very much about the love of my work. I don't really do a lot of personal things on there. That's what I don't do. That's fine for them. But I'm really committed. And to me, it's about doing that the best way possible. I find it valuable. I mean, you guys are probably on it all day long, right? Checking information for that. It's priceless, right? But you got to fact check. You've got to fact check. That's another about having been at CNN. I often repeat back what I'm told to someone I'm speaking with just to make sure I heard it right.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about social media?
I find it interesting. I used to, when I was in high school, I used to use it a ton. And then as I got into college, I stopped using it as much. And now I'm kind of more back into it a little bit. So for me, it's just kind of been like an up and down ride with it. But I think if it's used for the right reasons, it can be a great tool. But I think that people take advantage of being able to speak to people not face to face. And I think that gets taken advantage of too much, and things become too personal because you can't read the tone of conversations that are being had.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
And as we all know, trolling and all of that stuff.
Right.
It's cowardly, right?
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, it's a wonderful, beautiful thing. It brings the world together. You can, I love Rita Wilson.
We mentioned social media, and I think it's so crucial, but I think I've had a little different experience with social media because, as Nancy, you know, like I started doing podcasting at an earlier age than most, I would say. And whenever in high school or early in college, you know, I would always hear social media is such a negative thing. I go, what do you mean? It's not negative in any way. I mean, sure, there are negative components, but personally, for my side, you know, it's really only helped and been able to grow so many great relationships. Do you feel like it is easier to do your job with social media now?
It's very different. I think it's easier in a lot of ways. It's also a little bit less personal because back in the day, in the 2000s, I would have great relationships with guys in the clubhouse that would give me information, and not to out Flash or anything, but John Flaherty was my go-to guy. Whenever I needed a little inside information, I would just kind of say, hey, John, hey, what's up? Got a few minutes? And he would tell me, tell me about Moose. I want to know, why is Moose doing this? And, and through it with me. And then I could go back and do my job, and I would, broadcast the parts of the information that I felt were appropriate, right? Because he would tell me some things that were private with regard to routine, all kinds of different things, his love of peanut butter, things like that. So it was fun. But I think that it's easier, but it's also different. But that doesn't make it better or worse. It's just evolving. That's how I look at it.
How is it like working with John Flaherty now in a different role than you've worked with him before? How is it like when you work with somebody as a player and now as a colleague?
Yeah, that's cool. Yes. Well, I remember having conversations with him in the clubhouse saying, come on, you're training to be a broadcaster after this is over. You cannot tell me otherwise. You are going to TV. He would just laugh, but he would ask for pointers here and there too. So I think he's a very, very, very smart guy. And sometimes you'll see the role players, the guys that aren't necessarily the superstars, but that had to dig and work a little harder. Sometimes they are a little bit more ready with regard to a long-term plan and other parts of their life than guys that were superstars who that's their thing, right? So that's the trade-off there. I have found that trend. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no doubt.
And Jack Curry kind of said the same.
But he's wonderful.
Yeah. No, Jack Curry almost said the same thing, Nancy, because what he says now, because I asked him the question I asked you before, and I know I stumped you with this, and you complimented it with it. You thought it was a decent question. It was, I asked John, who's one current player, on the Yankee roster that would make a good broadcaster? And he said, well, I'm going to do the easy out with that. I'm going to say Austin Romine, as a backup catcher, and Jack would always go to him to figure out, okay, what's Tanaka? How's Tanaka doing? How's Severino doing? And he would get his all his stuff for the week, just by talking to Austin Romine for 5 minutes on, a weekday game or whatever it was when he would go into the stadium. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and almost you kind of saying the same thing with you and Flash.
Oh, well, I didn't know he did that, but yeah, that was what I did. I would go to Flash when I obviously I would ask everyone on my own. I had, good relationships with Roger Clemens and Eddie Pettit and everyone, but my go-to information guy was definitely John Flaherty. That's interesting that Jack did that, catchers, right? You go to the catcher.
You cover the Nets. How is it like covering basketball?
I covered it obviously at CNN as well. So I had that background, covered everything at CNN. It's nice. It's a very different change of pace. I think that we learn things from covering the Nets that oftentimes we may try bringing into baseball. Baseball, obviously, much more traditional, correct?
Yeah.
And the NBA and certainly the broadcast of NBA games is more creative currently in the obvious way. I'm not saying it's more creative in every sense, but some of the things that you see at an NBA game, as you know, you're not going to see in baseball.
Right.
But it's very exciting, very interesting. The peaks and valleys, the Jason Kidd years and Vince Carter, my all-time favorite guy. Now KD and Kyrie, we're looking forward to that. It's a challenging time for us. I'm just looking forward to when we can all go back to a life where we can connect in person.
Yeah. You know, you also with the Yes Network host Yankee Magazine. What is this like for you? Because I feel like what you said, it's to tell people stories and to get away from the statistics of the player and get to know them as people. I feel like this show in particular really gets to the underlying who a player is in this show.
That's why I love my job so much. You get your echoes, you get to host batting practice, occasionally pre and post, certainly pre and post nets. And then you've got Yankees Magazine. And I've been able to attend community events with our Yankee players and the organization figures from our organization. So great to see the contributions that they make in the community, but you get to spend some personal time with them, and that all creates the relationships. And I really credit Yankees Magazine for allowing me to have the chance to create relationships. Certainly you can when you're in the clubhouse as well, but Yankees Magazine is that other extra element. You know, it's a more personal connection. We're usually seeing each other away from the ballpark. It's so special. I remember one time recording my on-camera stand-ups back when I did it at the stadium and not in studio. And Ichiro was working out, just playing catch behind me. Next thing I know, he's right up against me. I didn't know. The guy didn't tell me. Face right here. And he says, "Yes, the Yes Network." He's just like goofing around. But it was so much fun, you know? And then there's the other side of it, being in the clubhouse looking for Don Mattingly, who is my all-time favorite, again, with many other people. And when he came around the corner, and the first time, I know I've told this story before, but the first time I met him, I did pause for a moment. And being the guy that he is, I think he recognized that. He probably gets it a lot. And I said, I'll just get it out of the way right now. You're my guy. You're my favorite guy. I had a T-shirt with your name on it and a poster in my room. So thank you. Now I'll move on.
I did it on mute. I started talking when it was on mute, but whatever. With the
Yankees,
okay. Yeah. Everybody knows about the Yankees postseason history and kind of what it's like in New York when the playoffs are on. What is it like covering the Yankees when they're in the postseason and they're making a run?
I'm so glad you asked that question, Vinnie. I'm so glad you unmuted yourself. Good job. I'm so it is almost indescribable. It's everything you think it's going to be and then some. Coming from a nonpartisan point of view when you're at CNN Sports and you're not a fan of anyone, not that you're a fan when you do your job, but you are, in your heart, right? You're a Yankee fan in your heart. And you clearly, when you work for the Yankees and the Yes Network, you do want the team to do well. But when you're actually covering it, that 2009 World Series and covering that is something that I'll never forget. And I'm still very close with these guys, Mark Teixeira and Damon, and, they're just fabulous guys. And that championship is so meaningful to them. I recently spoke with Mark Teixeira, and he talked about how, hey, we're still the reigning champs. And I said, yeah, you guys are, So that year was just special. You could feel it. The 17 walk-off wins. Mm-hmm. You could just feel it. When guys talk about, and as a player, Vinnie, when you're feeling it and you're kind of knowing it, it really is something almost tangible, right?
In 2009, Jack Curry was not with the Yes Network, and he joined on in 2010. So I had to ask him. I had to ask him if he thought he was the reason the Yankees hadn't won since 2009. Do you think Jack Curry is the reason that the Yankees have not won a World Series since 2009.
100%. That's it. That's the reason. That's great. I'm glad you said that to him. What did he say?
He said no.
Yeah.
He said it wasn't his fault.
Basically he said, like, he framed it, Nancy. He said that he said, well, because, even though the Yankees haven't won a World Series in 2009, the Yankees and the Yes Network are one of the most highest rated TV shows and stations out there. So I think basically what he was saying is, even though the Yankees haven't won the World Series, adding him on boosted up the ratings.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. We'll go with that. Sure. Wink, wink.
But Nancy, this is
that's great.
Yeah, Jack's one of the best. I know, I'm sure you get asked this every single time, but who is one of your favorite people you get to work with every day at the Yes Network?
I thought you were going to ask me who is the most meaningful person along the way. Maybe I'll answer that anyway as I go back. You can't, it's your favorite child. You can't do that. But I do have some people that are, and one of them is certainly David Cohn. He's just so smart. I will often Cohn now, so I get the whole battery equation. But, I'm going to answer that other, because we had talked on the phone yesterday, as you mentioned, and the most important advice I ever got was from Bill McPhail. He was the president of CNN Sports at the time, and he's the man that changed my life back then because he chose me to replace Hannah. Out of thousands of applicants, he chose me. Changed my life, obviously. Lee McPhail was a longtime executive with the New York Yankees and American League president. That was his brother. And I did mention Andy McPhail from the Philadelphia Phillies. And Larry McPhail, their father, Lee and Bill's father, also in the Hall of Fame. So big time baseball family. He told me, and I'll never, just fresh air, extremely young, I sat in his office. This is what I'll tell you. And he said, discover who you are. Once you've got that, then go about becoming the best you that you can be. Yeah. That's how I lead my life.
That's really good stuff.
Isn't that amazing? He's, God rest his soul. He just the most incredible man, the most incredible man. He changed all of our lives.
Absolutely. And, I completely agree with that advice. And especially in today's age, that's what you have to do. You have to be your own person. And that's really how you become authentic and real in the industry. Just basically be you.
That's why I'm not really a great actress, because I'm me. So it's very hard for me to not be me. Other people can slide right into acting and stuff. How to do that now a little bit, but I'm never going to be an actress. Let's put it that way. Do you have time for one Mr. Steinbrenner story? I just thought of it.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We have plenty of time.
2002. All right. Beginnings of the Yes Network. I'm in the Yankee Stadium lobby, and there's Mr. Steinbrenner coming off the elevator. And, you freeze, right? It's Mr. Steinbrenner. So I was so excited to see him that I actually stepped up to him and I said, Mr. Steinbrenner, Nancy Newman, I'm so happy to meet you. And thank you, blah, blah, blah. And he starts talking back and forth for a couple of minutes, and then he stops and he says, hold on a minute. He said, you're not afraid of me, are you? And I said, am I supposed to be? Upstairs, and we talked for about a half hour, and it was one of the best days of my life.
That's really good. That's really good stuff. Don't be scared of anybody, even if it's Mr. Steinbrenner.
I was so young. I was just so overwhelmed and happy to see him, and in awe of him, but not awestruck in that I couldn't speak to him. I was just so super excited, and I guess he saw that. No, I wasn't afraid. I was excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't.
There you go.
Go ahead, Alex. You're better at explaining it than I am.
All right, Nancy. So this is our segment. It's a newer segment. We're working out the kinks of it, but it's called Balls and Strikes. And the idea is, so Vinny and I will go back and forth. We'll ask you a question. So like I'll ask you a question and you determine if it's a ball or a strike. You can answer either or, but the first one to a strikeout, either myself or Vinny, wins.
The first one to strike out wins?
Yeah, the first one to get a strikeout. Yep. So.
Oh, to get a strikeout wins. Okay.
Yep. So like it's almost like it's like a quick round, quick questions.
Okay, let's try it.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Alex.
All right. So I'll lead it off. I'll lead it off.
Like I said, if I don't like something, I'll let you know. Go ahead.
What would be your favorite baseball movie of all time to watch?
Okay. It has to be A League of Their Own. It just makes me laugh. If it's on, it just makes me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
I love Tom Hanks. How can you not, right? It's just so funny and so inspiring at the same time. So that's my answer.
Would you say the question was a ball or a strike?
I would say that is a strike.
Look at that, Vinny.
Good for you, Alex. Good for you.
All right. This is what I got to keep doing. So like Nancy, Vinny hasn't won at this yet. We've been doing a few interviews now, and Vinny has not won at this game. And I think my new like strategy is to just bring people on that just like me, and they'll always side with my question. So
Well, Alex should win every time because he is the journalist and he is used to interviewing people. I'm still dipping my toe into it and getting used to doing it. So at this moment, he should keep beating me.
You guys are really, really doing a good job. I got to tell you, I like this chemistry. I like this combination. I love the two of you together.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Ask Alex about that. He might not say the same thing. Right, Alex? Huh?
Okay.
it depends. It depends on. It depends on.
Who has the next pitch? Who has the next pitch?
Alex does.
Sorry, go ahead.
All right. So I'm ahead 0-1.
Okay.
I'm ahead 0-1. Ooh, Vinny, I have to go for this one.
Yep.
Sorry. I have to go. It's going to be an 0-2 in a second. You have 4 Emmys behind you, Nancy. Which is the most meaningful Emmy?
Actually, I have several more. I've been giving them
Alex.
to my mom.
Yeah, Alex.
Just to say that. Yes. I don't think one is more important than the other. They're all kind of special because they're for everything. One is for game telecast. One is for Yankees pregame host. One is for Yankees batting practice host. There are a few for the Nets and even for our social media. So they're all really special and they're all varied, but they're incredibly, incredibly meaningful, So I'm going to give that one a ball.
I like that a lot. Okay, I'll go now.
Call it a ball. I'm calling that one a ball.
What is one thing, if any, that you've had to learn how to do during the quarantine COVID period that when we go back to normal at some point that you would like to keep doing?
Very good question. Let's see. Being more mindful, and that for me means not just racing through my day, but thinking about it and thinking about my mom, and not that I don't anyway, but I'm really committed to listening to every word and not waiting to do my next thing. And I've become that way with almost everything that I'm doing, even if it's cleaning the house. So I think being in the moment and staying mindful and not running to the next thing. Strike.
So, all right, we've talked about during this interview how you got into your profession, but at what point, whether it being after you started being a broadcaster or whenever, did you know that you were going to be successful doing it?
Never thought I wouldn't be. As soon as I was 19 years old and volunteering during school, The guys at the time at the local station were 40 something odd years old. They asked me to write a script. I think it was on college football. They wanted it to be 30 seconds. I would write copy and tell the story in 30 seconds. Then they would ask me to write something else. I was only writing in the early days. And I noticed that they were reading everything I wrote word per word on the air. I thought, I'm 19 years old and they're reading my copy as is. I must be good at this. So there's something here. And then the first time the forward-thinking general manager at the time put me on the air just to see how I do. And I could formulate the story in my head. It was already there. I knew which clips I was going to use on the ride back. And I'm still in school. I hadn't even finished yet. And I knew I had my brain worked properly for this business. And then when I went in front of the camera, I think what really iced it was I was reporting and I wanted to anchor. And the first time they let me anchor, these highlights came out of me like they'd always been there. And I could just talk all the way through it because I'd been watching sports. And ever since I was a little kid, I was planted in front of the TV with my father. So there was nothing I really didn't know. It's all inside and it was just coming out. So there's your answer. Strike.
All right. So as you've grown as a broadcaster through your career, and we see more up and coming, like people who are trying to get into the business, what would be your advice to somebody who's listening this that's like 12 years old, girl or boy, whoever it may be? What would be your advice to them on how to do this job?
Well, I think I would approach it differently depending on the age of the youngster asking. For someone as young as 12 or 13, I would say just keep discovering what you love. And as you do that, you never know. You might get exposed to something you've not seen yet that might click for you. So don't be in a hurry to make decisions. Follow your career path, but be open to what may be coming in. I hadn't planned on being on TV, and look what happened. You know, that was not my original game plan. Yeah. So, and then once you're older and already starting on the road in this business, I would repeat what Bill McPhail said to me, which was to discover who you are and then become the best you can be at it. Strike.
Nancy.
That's big. That is big. This feels good.
Sorry.
Good for me. I'm happy right now. We have two questions that we have to ask every single podcast. So Alex, you ask the first one.
All right, Nancy.
Okay.
One. Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. You just pick.
Would you rather drink out of a plastic cup or a glass cup?
Oh, glass. Would anyone say plastic?
Yeah, quite a few, like a decent amount, maybe 20% of the guests say plastic.
No, glass. I even want a glass when I order a beer. So
I agree. All right. And then the most important position, or the most important question for me is, what is the best, not most important or anything, the best position in baseball?
The best.
Uh-huh.
Okay, what does the best mean to you? I'm thinking for Vinnie, it's first base. I just have a hunch. But my answer, it's just, that's a tough one, because you would want to say pitcher, because obviously, when it's a Garrett Cole on the mound, it is the pitcher, right? But if it's not a cold day, then it could be any given guy at any given time. So I think my answer to that would be the capabilities of the individual as opposed to the position.
Talk about not answering a question. The runaround right there. And that was impressive. You could tell
that's the way I see it. Because I'm thinking Aaron Judge changes the game, right? But if it's anyone else in right, it's not the same. So, yeah.
But if it's Mike Trout in right field,
Well, then, hey, it's right field, right? See? So I had a good answer there, Vinny. What are you saying?
I know you want to say first base, so we're just going to assume that that's what you were going to say. That's what I'm going to put in my notes. So you're still on the list for guest of the year nominees. That's good that I didn't have to take you off the list. But so I'm going to put down first base for you. You remain on the list.
well, I don't know, Vinny. She gave you the strikeout.
Do what you have to do.
I think Nancy's
Do what you have to do.
nominated. I think, unfortunately, you're no longer on the list for guest of the year since you gave Vinny the strikeout.
Come on, Alex. That's just not fair. That's just not right. I am on that list.
I agree. I agree 100%.
No sore losers in the house.
None at all. This is what happens when he loses.
Very good. Very good.
I'm a competitive person.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I may not look it, but I really am.
That's why you got to bring those skates back out, Nancy.
No, you got to know who you are. You got to know who you are.
That's right. And you be the best version of that person, right?
That's it. You got it.
Well, Nancy, to wrap up, we just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on a whole new ball game today. As Vinny always says, blow yourself up. Where can the followers and listeners follow you all over social media? Give your 30-second elevator pitch of why we should follow Nancy Newman on social media.
Hey, why wouldn't you want to, right? I'm a good human being, and I love the Yankees. And if you're a Yankee fan, you have to follow us all on Yes. And it's at Nancy Newman Yes, both Twitter and Instagram, keeping it simple. And I'd be glad to hear from you. If anybody wants to DM me, have at it.
Nancy, thanks again for coming on today. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy.
Guys, I enjoyed it. I really like you two together, okay? Good stuff. Keep it going.
What an interview with the one and only Nancy Newman, even though she's off the guest of the list nominee list on my side because...
Wait, hold on, Alex. What was that you just said? What are you saying? I'd like you to just clean up your English a little bit and try that one more time.
Nancy is no longer on my guest of the year list.
There you go.
Because she just felt so bad for Vinny and all the awful questions he was asking her.
Well,
I guess I just can't talk in the outro.
No, you're having a hard time. And I think it's just because you're a sore loser. And, it's hard for you to take losing. And after that interview, you lost very fair, very clean, everything. And you're having a hard time with that. And, I understand, but it takes a man to lose. It really does, to come talk on this podcast after you lost that round of balls and strikes, that takes guts of you, Alex. And I'm really proud of you for stepping up to the plate today and, talking to the people, even though you didn't want to after a tough loss.
Yeah, but I always want to talk to the people. Don't put those words in my mouth, okay?
No, I'm just saying I'm happy. I'm proud of you for addressing the loss and owning it, owning it.
Well, I think I got a good chance to go on a nice win streak after today.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I don't even remember at this point which guests we had before balls and strikes and which not. So, we've got, 7 more interviews that we're ready to pump out. We're going 3 times a week next week, but I can't remember who was before balls and strikes and who was after balls and strikes. So, it'll be a surprise for me when they come out on who we played balls and strikes with. I do not believe we played it with our guest who comes on Monday. So our next guest, a little preview for everybody, will be Darryl Strawberry. We got him on the pod. It was a really cool interview. It was definitely interesting, that's for sure. And Darryl Strawberry brings a different perspective to things. So it's definitely interesting to hear his story and kind of how he lives his life and everything like that. But I think that we were playing 3 up, 3 down with him at that point. So he didn't get to tell us how bad our questions are. He just got to answer some.
He didn't get to tell you how bad your questions were.
Oh,
But overall, I think this was just a really great interview with Nancy, and I think our editing department really hit a home run saving this interview. And
Yeah, our editing department does a great job, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy that I get to work with such a great editing department. I mean, they're just fantastic.
Thank you. So, Vinny, I know to wrap up on this Christmas Eve, even though it will be going out on Christmas Eve, we'll be with you, the listeners, on Christmas morning. We'll do a Christmas special that morning. We're going to record it on Christmas. And
yeah, we're gonna record, and Alex apparently has a surprise for me that he's looking for my reaction. So we're gonna get that live reaction. We're gonna put it out there.
Everyone listening and watching this right now, like, prepare yourself for the ultimate surprise for Vinny.
And if it's a gift, I just want you to know, Alex, that I got you nothing. So I just want you to be prepared for that right now.
No, like, I can't wait for you to see the reaction. Like, I'm just laughing thinking about it. Like, you are not going to expect this at all.
Well, expect the unexpected. That's how I live my life, Alex. So you can try. We'll see what happens.
Like, I already asked some of your friends too. I talked to some of your friends.
Oh, so you've done some background research. Oh, now I'm actually a little terrified.
And I asked them, I pitched to them. I'm not going to tell you who.
I could guess at least one that you probably talked to. I would assume Bryce Wyndham was spoken to about this.
No,
that would be my first guess.
Nope. And let me just say, your friends thought it was a genius idea, and they also can't wait to see your reaction.
Now I'm actually a little bit excited. You did some background, but okay. Well, everybody, please go have a safe holiday. Do what you need to do, and we will be back next month. Well, we'll actually be back for a special on Christmas Day, but in terms of interviews, we will be back on Monday with Daryl Strawberry.